If you are watching this, you are likely looking for a way to turn your sports knowledge into a consistent stream of profit without the headaches of traditional sports betting. PrizePicks has evolved significantly over the last few years, becoming the titan of daily fantasy sports by simplifying the experience into a more or less format. But let's be honest, while the interface is simple, winning consistently is not. Most people approach this like a lottery, picking their favourite players and hoping for the best. That is exactly what the house wants you to do. Today, we are going to break down the math, the strategy, and the 2026 market dynamics that will transform you from a casual fan into a sharp player. To start, you need to understand that PrizePicks is not a sportsbook in the traditional sense. It is a fixed odds fantasy platform. This means the payouts for a 2-pick power play or a 5-pick flex play do not change based on the specific players you choose. This is your biggest advantage. In a traditional sportsbook, if a player is very likely to go over their point total, the odds might be -150 or -200, meaning you have to risk a lot more to win a little. On PrizePicks, every player is essentially treated as having -119 odds if you calculate the implied probability across their slips. Your goal is to find players whose actual chance of hitting the more or less is higher than that 54.3% break-even point. One of the most important concepts to grasp in 2026 is the power of the flex play versus the power play. Beginners often gravitate toward power plays because they see the 10x or 40x multipliers and get stars in their eyes. However, the math tells a different story. The power play is an all or nothing game. If you go 4 for 5 on a 5-pick power play, you walk away with 0. On the other hand, the flex play provides a safety net. In the long run, the volume of entries you can keep alive through flex plays significantly reduces your variance. When we talk about variance, we are talking about the natural swings of luck in sports. Even the best projections can be ruined by an unexpected injury in the first quarter or a blowout where starters are benched. By using flex plays, you ensure that one fluke doesn't wipe out your entire bankroll. You also need to pay close attention to the specific sports you are targeting. While the NFL and NBA remain the most popular, the 2026 landscape has seen a massive surge in niche markets like esports, particularly Counter-Strike 2 and League of Legends, as well as specialised soccer markets. These markets are often less efficient than the NFL. The PrizePicks analysts are incredibly good at setting lines for LeBron James or Patrick Mahomes, but they might not be as sharp when it comes to a mid-tier esports player in a European tournament. This is where you find your edge. The next pillar of a winning strategy is understanding line movement and closing line value. Just like the stock market, player projections on PrizePicks are fluid. If a star player is ruled out of a game, his teammates' projections will likely rise because they will see more usage. If you can catch these lines before PrizePicks adjust them, you are gaining massive value. You should be following beat writers on social media and keeping an eye on injury reports every single hour. In 2026, there are also numerous optimizer tools that compare PrizePicks lines to the odds set by sharp offshore sportsbooks. If DraftKings or Pinnacle has a player's over priced at -150, but PrizePicks still has it as a standard pick, that is a mathematically profitable play. You are essentially getting a discount on the probability. This is called positive expected value, or plus EV betting. If you make enough plus EV plays over time, the math guarantees that you will come out ahead, regardless of short-term losses. Let's talk about correlated slips. This is a strategy that many beginners overlook. Correlation is the idea that if one thing happens, another thing is more likely to happen. For example, in the NFL, if a quarterback goes over his passing yards total, it is highly likely that his primary wide receiver will also go over his receiving yards total. On PrizePicks, you want to build slips where the outcomes are tied together. If you take the more on a QB and the more on his WR, you only need one thing to go right, the passing offense to be successful, to hit 2 legs of your slip. Conversely, you can use negative correlation to your advantage. If you take the more on a quarterback's passing yards and the less on the opposing team's running back's rushing yards, you are betting on a specific game script where one team dominates through the air and the other team is forced to abandon the run. Building a narrative for the game and selecting picks that fit that narrative is much more effective than picking random players from 5 different sports. Bankroll management is the unsexy part of PrizePicks that actually keeps you in the game. You could have the best strategy in the world, but if you bet 50% of your account on a single slip, you will eventually go broke. The gold standard for 2026 is the unit system. One unit should be approximately 1% to 2% of your total bankroll. If you have $1,000 in your account, your standard bet should be $10 to $20. This allows you to weather the inevitable losing streaks. Even the most professional players have days where they go 0 for 5. If you are managed correctly, those days are just a minor speed bump. If you are over-leveraged, those days are a disaster. Never chase your losses. If you have a bad afternoon, the worst thing you can do is place a massive, unresearched bet on a late-night game just to try and get back to even. That is how the house wins. Stick to the process, trust the data, and play the long game. Another key feature to exploit in 2026 are the PrizePicks promotions. They frequently offer Taco Tuesdays or discounted projections, where a player's line is significantly lowered. For example, they might move Luka Doncic's point total from 30.5 down to 0.5. These are essentially free squares. However, the mistake beginners make is using the free square and then pairing it with 4 high-risk, unresearched picks. You should treat the discounted leg as a golden opportunity to lock in a plus EV slip. Pair it with your highest confidence, data-backed picks to maximize the chance of a payout. Also, pay attention to the reboot policy. PrizePicks has a very user-friendly policy where if a player gets injured in the first half and doesn't return, their leg is often voided. Understanding these rules can help you decide which players carry more risk. High-volume players who have a history of mid-game exits are inherently riskier than Ironman players who stay on the court. The psychological aspect of PrizePicks is just as important as the numbers. The app is designed to be flashy and fun, which can trigger impulsive behaviour. You need to approach this with the mindset of a business analyst. Before you lock in any slip, ask yourself, am I picking this because I want it to happen as a fan, or because the data tells me it is likely to happen? Emotional betting is the fastest way to lose money. If you are a die-hard Lakers fan, you might want to avoid betting on Lakers games altogether because your bias will cloud your judgment. You will always want to pick the more for your favourite players, even when the matchup is terrible. In 2026, the availability of advanced stats is better than ever. Look at usage rates, defensive efficiency, and pace of play. If a fast-paced team is playing another fast-paced team, the total number of possessions will be higher, which naturally favours the more on almost all player stats. If two slow, defensive-minded teams are facing off, look toward the less. Lastly, keep a record of your plays. You cannot improve what you do not measure. Use a spreadsheet to track which sports you are most successful in, which types of slips, power versus flex, are yielding the best returns, and how your ROI looks over time. Most players think they are winning more than they actually are because they remember the big wins and forget the small losses. By tracking your data, you will see the cold, hard truth. Maybe you realise you are actually terrible at NBA picks, but have an 80% win rate in NHL. That realisation alone would double your profits by allowing you to reallocate your funds to your strengths. PrizePicks in 2026 is a game of thin margins. You don't need to be a genius to win, but you do need to be disciplined, data-driven, and patient. Avoid the get-rich-quick mentality. Focus on making one good decision at a time, building slips based on correlation and market value, and managing your bankroll like a professional. If you follow these steps, you won't just be playing PrizePicks, you will be beating it. Success comes to those who outwork the field and outthink the house. Start small, learn the rhythm of the markets, and always keep your emotions in check. The opportunities for profit are there if you know where to look. Welcome to the sharp side of fantasy sports. This is how you win. Use the tools available to you, stay updated on every roster change, and never stop refining your process. The landscape will continue to change, but the fundamentals of value and probability will always remain the same. Take these lessons, apply them to your next entry, and watch your consistency grow. Good luck, and let's get to work.